Interrogating Strategy with Denice. Interrogating Strategy is more than a podcast. It is a strategic leadership platform established to stimulate informed dialogue, challenge conventional thinking, and inspire practical solutions to complex policy, governance, and developmental challenges confronting South Africa, the African continent, and the global community. The platform brings together thought leaders, policymakers, traditional leaders, academics, business executives, developmental practitioners, and innovators to interrogate the effectiveness of national strategies, public policies, corporate strategies, and developmental programs. Our objective is simple: to move beyond rhetoric and ask difficult questions that often remain unanswered. At the heart of our episode is a fundamental belief that strategy has little value unless it is successfully executed. Through evidence-based discussions and diverse perspectives, we examine not only what government institutions and organizations intend to achieve, but whether those intentions translate into measurable outcomes that improve people's lives. Our conversations span a broad range of strategic issues, including economic development, governance, infrastructure, education, artificial intelligence, public sector, investment, innovation, and sustainable development. We believe that the greatest solutions emerge when leaders from different sectors engage openly, respectfully, and courageously. Today's live recording forms part of that ongoing commitment. It provides a platform where ideas can be challenged, assumptions tested, and practical recommendations developed in pursuit of a more prosperous, inclusive, and accountable society. As we interrogate today's theme, Closing the NDP Vision 2030 Strategy Execution Gap, I invite each of you not to merely listen, but to participate. Let us question boldly, think strategically, and collaborate openly. Let us move beyond identifying problems and focus on developing implementable solutions. Because the future of our country will not be shaped by the quality of our debates alone. It will be shaped by the quality of the actions that follow. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Interrogating Strategy with Denice, where we challenge ideas, inspire leadership, and transform strategy into measurable impact. I am your host, Denice Manganye. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have with us an exceptional panel of distinguished leaders, practitioners, and subject matter experts who collectively bring decades of experience in traditional governance, business leadership, public policy, higher education, special planning, and transport infrastructure. As I introduce each one of our esteemed panelists, I kindly ask that they get ready, and our first panelist, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Jose Minga, the second of the Minga dynasty. Jose Minga is not only a respected leader of the Royal Council of Minga, but also a legal expert and a passionate advocate for sustainable rural development. Through his leadership within the Minga Royal Council, he has consistently championed the interests of traditional communities, understands firsthand the governance, land administration, and institutional challenges facing traditional authorities in South Africa today. He will share valuable expertise on the evolving role of traditional leadership in the development and some of the practical challenges confronting our royal councils as partners in local governance and community leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jose Minga. Our second panelist is Mr. Rex Dlamini. Mr. Rex Dlamini is one of the region's most respected business leaders and currently serves as the president of the Mangwane Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is a seasoned entrepreneur whose business journey spans more than 4 decades, having established and successfully operated enterprises since the 80s in Guyana and across various parts of South Africa. His extensive experience provides him with unique insights into entrepreneurship, local economic development, investment, business sustainability, and opportunities and constraints facing rural economies. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Rex Dlamini. Our third panelist. It is now my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce Mr. Godfrey Helani. Mr. Helani is a distinguished policy analyst and a higher education specialist with extensive experience in public policy, academic development, labor relations, conflict resolution, and institutional leadership. He previously served as a senior executive dean of student affairs at the University of Johannesburg for approximately 10 years, where he provided strategic leadership for more than 51,000 students and a large team of professionals across 4 campuses. His expertise spans governance, higher education policy, institutional transformation, leadership development, and public sector reform, making him exceptionally well placed to contribute to today's strategic dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Godfrey Helani. Our fourth panelist is Mr. Chiliti Muziaba. Mr. Muziaba is a highly respected town and regional planning specialist with more than 24 years of professional experience in spatial planning, municipal development, and land use management. He currently serves as the managing member of Rural Planning Consultants. Throughout his distinguished career, he has provided planning support to municipalities across South Africa and has worked with multidisciplinary teams across and under the Development Bank of Southern Africa to strengthen municipal planning and implementation. He is also serving as both chairperson and member of Municipal Planning Tribunals in Limpopo, bringing extensive expertise in planning legislation, township establishment, land development applications, municipal planning systems, and the district development model. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Chiliti Montielo. Our fifth and our final panelist is Mr. Mosenwa Mofi. Mr. Mofi is one of South Africa's most accomplished transport policy and railway specialists, bringing over 20 years of executive leadership experience across the entire railway value chain. He previously served as Chief Executive of Prasa Rail Operations and was the founding Chief Executive of Railway Safety Regulator, where he successfully established the organization as South Africa's independent railway safety regulator. He also served as Director and Chief Director within the National Department of Transport, providing leadership on national policy, transport legislation, intergovernmental relations, and public finance management. Today, Mr. Mofi is the Managing Director of Twin House Consulting. He continues to advise organizations on transport policy, railway operations, infrastructure planning, and strategic transport support. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Mr. Mosenwa Mofi. Ladies and gentlemen, as we transition to the next item, I would like to give each of our distinguished panelists a warm round of applause, but also give them an opportunity to quickly introduce themselves. I will start with Osi Ninka.
Thank you very much, Tata Manganye, for inviting us to this very important occasion where we are requested to highlight the challenges facing our country, especially as regards traditional communities. It is indeed a very, very important issue that we're going to discuss. The issue that I personally dealt with in the past 30 years of my life. So thank you for giving me this opportunity today that I can highlight some of the challenges facing the institution and the communities that we lead. Thank you.
Thank you, and Bezita. I will now ask Mr. Mofi Nsema.
Thank you, Mr. Manganye. Firstly, let me appreciate the invite to make an input to such an important topic. I think from my angle, it's really to interrogate the infrastructure projects, the impact that they make, the results and outcomes that they lead to. The concern generally has been that if you look particularly at the provincial and municipal level, how we measure success on infrastructure projects. It's about the X number of kilometer roads that we built, or the X number of pipes that have been laid to support the bulk water system. We don't necessarily look, although it may be on paper an outcome that is desired, but the reality is that we simply don't look at the impact on the communities. We don't look at the percentage of beneficiaries, intended beneficiaries, who are able to access reliable water. If you put a bulk water system and 40% of it, it's lost for various reasons, whether it's leakages, whether it's vandalism, whether the system is not operating optimally from a technical point of view. Have you achieved your objective? You've been able to do the construction, you've been able to undertake all the necessary outputs, to realize all the necessary outputs. But what is the impact on communities? Just one example. I remember one day I was so excited. I had to report when I was working for Metro Rail. I had to report successes. I had generated exceptional revenues for a quarter. And I presented the revenues that were generated, the trains that were overhauled. There's what we call the rolling stock overhaul program. I had met the budget targets. And then in that meeting, one board member raised a question. He says, look, I can see all the targets are green. But there's one target that we have not realized. These trains, in terms of on-time performance, they are at 75%, and your target for on-time performance was 95%. Have you achieved anything? Because if people are late at work, irrespective of how many trains you've been able to fix, irrespective of how many trains you've been able to overhaul, have you realized the goal? Are your passengers experiencing the outcomes that you had planned? And I think that's the angle that I really want us to look at, because there is too much fixation with in municipalities. You've got the municipal infrastructure card. And if a municipality has performed, we look at X budget spent on projects. But what is the impact of those projects? Are you seeing more cars on the road? Are you seeing efficient movement of people? Are you seeing more connection of people and cities? So there's a whole range of issues that are quite important when we interrogate infrastructure projects. So I think that's the angle that I want to come up with. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mu, for your opening remarks. Thank you very much. And Mr. Godfrey Alani for his opening remarks.
Thanks very much for having me here. And you would have heard from the introduction that I'm very passionate with policy analysis. And within the context of bridging the gap between the strategy and execution and measuring how far we are as municipalities, I've got serious interest in education. Education has been repeatedly referred to as a cornerstone of development that is sustainable. But how many municipalities have taken an advantage of education to develop municipalities to create sustainable life? For example, I would be speaking to university cities. By definition, university cities refers to municipalities that have dedicated the generation of their resources, economy, to be related to public higher institution. And I will also speak, giving an example to where municipalities have taken this advantage. As for example, in South Africa, we have got Stellenbosch that took advantage of that. We have got Makhanda. Makhanda is former Grahamstown, which took advantage and have their municipalities to be university cities where serious economic activity is around that. Building accommodation, dedicating space for accommodation for students, which generate money, mobilizing transport facility and infrastructure, which generate money around here while creating that. And we also have got varsities in the US. One of the universities, this one is of King Abdullah. It is in Asian country. It owns billions and billions of infrastructure because they took university city as very seriously. And when we speak of university city, it is not only relating to economy, it also relates to culture. Because the sustainable success, which you can measure from our public policy, like the rights of education from Constitution, your national your national development plan, which comes down to the integrated development plan of the municipalities. It is not only on infrastructure when you can realize and measure, it is also on culture through which you measure the quality of life that infrastructure would have assistance. So for municipalities to take advantage of this, let's move beyond only looking at infrastructure, but we look at superstructure, which comprises the infrastructure and which is important, but also culture, and also taking advantage of the technology that we have. And this, it will also need buy-in from everyone. You will need your political will, dedicated people, buy-in from communities, and buy-in from business to say, let the greater Guyana municipality be a university city. And it will need us to take charge of our own destinations And for us to take charge of our own destination, let's know where we want to be through University City. Let us develop the predestined goals to get us to that particular destination. So I will be talking and encouraging the municipality to realize its plan to bridge the gap. University City is essential in sustainable development through all these measurable goals that we have.
Thank you, Dr. Nhalani. I would now ask Mr. Chilizi Mtwanana for his opening.
Morning, Denice, for the opportunity. I would actually like to say this is a very diverse topic that needs to be done regularly with the involvement of professionals and all the stakeholders involved. As a town planner who has done a lot of work in the tribal authorities, in the municipal areas and all over, there's a lot of challenge that actually need to be addressed. And it cannot be addressed only by one stakeholder. It needs a multidisciplinary or involvement of different spheres of government, many stakeholders to come and deal with the issue. So here in this session, I would actually like to make it a point that we deal with the issues of policies, municipal policies, or municipal planning policies in terms of development, and also the greater issue which affects our local municipalities, especially here in the Mpopo area, and also in the Mopani and the Wembe area. There's a booming development. Development is happening every day. And if we are not careful in terms of management of infrastructure and that development, we will end up having a lot of challenges. And if we have challenges in terms of development, people are developing, but there's no infrastructure. We invite a lot of toys and protest from the people. So this is a session where we need to discuss about proper development, involvement of tribal authorities as our leaders, involvement of national government, involvement of local municipalities, and also involvement of communities who are the beneficiaries to development. So we need to have a strategy wherein we plan properly to avoid white elephants. You see a lot of infrastructure and buildings and stuff are just being developed haphazardly. You can look around, it operates for a year or a few months, but that is because there's no proper planning. So if there's proper planning, everyone's involved, it becomes a building or an infrastructure which is efficient and sustainable. So in these discussions like this, Mr. Denice, it's very important that we involve all the stakeholders and professionals to discuss about land issues. Land is very important. Everything is happening on land. So municipalities, when they prepare policies and plans, now these days there's a Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act, which is the act that tries to balance everything from the tribal authorities, municipalities and stuff. There are policies that municipalities are developing, like Spatial Development Framework, which tells you where to go and where not to go. And it also advises investors who want to invest in a particular piece of land. So it is important that when all these policies are developed, there's proper alignment between stakeholders. For example, let me just give an example. If you are developing a spatial development framework on a piece of land or any municipality, you need involvement of almost all sector departments and stakeholders. You will choose a direction where a small town will go in terms of development. But if you don't have information from the water authorities, the service provisions authority like ESCOM and others, then it will be a development that will happen but with no infrastructure, and it's a big problem. So I'm very happy to be part of this engagement, and I'm happy, and it will touch a lot of people out there who will actually, if they're interested, they will have to engage more and focus on implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your opening remarks. Now I'm going to ask Mr. Rex Lamini for his opinions. Thank you.
Firstly, I would like to thank you, Mr. Manganye, for the invite. As introduced, I'm the current president of Mangombe Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I'm here, I'm not alone today. I brought with me Mr. Errol Maruleke, who's part of the chamber. Our chamber was founded in 2018 for interest. The person who actually came in to induct us was the then Minister of Small Business, Castle Matade. He was here. So our founding principles have been the following: that we would like to work with the municipality. We want to differ from throwing stones at the municipality. We want to be with them so that we can influence the thinking from within. We are business, and as long as we are given space to talk to them, I think things will get better. As a matter of fact, we did achieve somewhat because they actually invited us to be in the LED forum. But that LED forum has got a lot of things which we discuss. Businesses come and do presentations, but we're still struggling with putting these requests from business into action. But at least we're there. And we've also been invited by TUT into the SCC committee of theirs, so that we can also understand what's happening, how business can benefit out of that. We also believe that business must be registered. It's important to register the business so that, it shows also to be part of the country, that you also want taxes to be collected. The other thing which we thought we should do for ourselves here is that we need to network. As business, we need to share information and we need to buy amongst ourselves. Because that also can strengthen our footprint here. We also try to train the youth through SETA programs, because the youth is the future. But in our own little way, we try to do that. We're happy to be here because it's important. All what the other presentations were done now is that business, we know business will improve. I've been here in business with Mr. Maruleke for quite a long time. The economy is stagnant. There's no growth because LED doesn't bring into the picture things which will create growth. So that's my summary, and thanks very much.
And again, to our panelists, thank you very much. for setting the scene. We now have a bit of context in terms of some of the strategic challenges facing the different sectors in this region of South Africa. Challenges in the traditional leadership governance model, challenges in terms of the needs of the business community, challenges also been articulated in terms of the approach to integrated developmental planning. And we've also heard from Mr. Lani what interventions can be pursued, particularly when one looks at the university city concept as a catalyst for economic growth and development. I now invite our panelists to prepare for what promises to be a robust, insightful, and solution-oriented discussion as we interrogate one of the most important questions facing our nation. How do we close the National Development Plan Vision 2030 strategy execution gap and transform strategy into measurable impact? That's what I'm hearing from our panelists to say, how do we move from theory to action? Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin today's discussion, allow me to set the scene. There comes a time in the life of every nation when it must pause, reflect, and honestly ask itself whether its ambitious or other ambitions are being matched by its actions. South Africa finds itself at precisely such a moment. As we move closer to 2030, we are called upon not only to celebrate our progress, but to confront the realities that continue to hinder inclusive growth, effective governance, and sustainable development. Again, panelists, I want to thank you for honoring this invitation and for joining us today for what I believe will align, would ensure that majority of our citizens are aligned with the realities and the challenges that are faced by people in rural South Africa. Today is not merely another conference. It is not another policy discussion. It is not another strategic planning session. It is a moment of reflection, a moment of truth, a moment of accountability, and perhaps, if we are courageous enough, a moment of reimagining the future of our commitments. Today we gather under the theme, Closing the National Development Plan Vision 2030, Strategy Execution Gap. Not because South Africa lacks vision, not because South Africa lacks plans, not because South Africa lacks policies, but because, despite having some of the most comprehensive development frameworks in the world, too many of our people continue to live without dignity that those plans promise. The uncomfortable truth is that our challenge is no longer planning. Our challenge is execution. Our challenge is implementation. Our challenge is turning aspirations into outcomes, turning budgets into sales, turning strategies into jobs, turning promises into opportunities, and turning hope into reality. When we look across our country, we see two South Africas. One South Africa is represented by places like Sandton, Waterfall City, Umhlanga, a place of world-class infrastructure, a place of investment, a place of opportunity, a place connected to global markets, a place where economic activity never sleeps. But there is another South Africa, a South Africa represented by many rural towns and villages, a South Africa where young people walk kilometers to access services, where roads remain unpaved, where investment struggles to arrive, where economic opportunities remain limited. where unemployment has become normalized, and where poverty is inherited from one generation to another. The question before us today is simple. How can two communities exist within the same democracy, under the same institution, guided by the same national development plan, yet experience such vastly different realities? That is the strategy execution gap we are talking about. The greatest threat facing our communities today is not lack of ideas, it is unemployment. Because unemployment is not merely an economic statistic. Unemployment today is sitting at 32%. It is a social crisis. It is a governance crisis. It is a developmental crisis. And ultimately, it becomes a dignity crisis. When a young graduate remains unemployed for years, we do not merely lose a worker. We lose confidence. We lose hope. We lose innovation. We lose future entrepreneurs. We lose future taxpayers. We lose future community leaders. And when millions experience this reality simultaneously, society begins to weaken. Unemployment breeds dependency. Dependency breeds frustration. Frustration breeds instability. And instability undermines development. That is why job creation cannot remain a chapter in a strategy document like National Development Plan. It must become the organizing principle of local development. The second challenge our panelists referred to earlier on has to do with inequality. South Africa remains one of the most unequal societies in the world. Not because opportunity does not exist, but because opportunity is unevenly distributed. Where you are born often determines the quality of education you receive, the infrastructure available to you, the networks you can access, the healthcare you receive, and ultimately the opportunities available to your family. The gap between rural and urban South Africa is not simply a geographical divide. It is increasingly becoming an opportunity divide, a developmental divide. If left unresolved, it becomes a generational divide. The National Development Plan envisioned a South Africa where all citizens would participate meaningfully in the economy. Yet, for many communities, that vision still feels distant. Not because the vision is flawed, but because the mechanisms of execution remain weak. And my panelists, most of them have alluded to that point. The third, and the most important one, two of my panelists refer to challenges around infrastructure. Infrastructure is not merely concrete and steel. Infrastructure is opportunity. Infrastructure is mobility. Infrastructure is economic participation. Infrastructure is dignity. A road connects a farmer to a market. A bridge connects a child to school. Reliable electricity connects entrepreneurs to consumers. Digital infrastructure connects rural communities to global opportunities. Without infrastructure, development remains theoretical. Without infrastructure, investment remains hesitant. Without infrastructure, communities remain excluded. Infrastructure is therefore not a technical issue. It is a strategic issue. It is a governance issue. And ultimately, it is a human development issue. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to introduce a thought that may challenge conventional thinking, a thought that deserves serious reflection. Throughout our history, traditional leaders have been the custodians of land. I personally do not like using the word traditional leaders. These are royal leaders. They are members of royal families. They've been custodians of land, custodians of culture, custodians of identity, custodians of community cohesion. Yet in many parts of South Africa, they've become something more. Whether formally recognized or not, many traditional authorities are already performing functions associated with local governance. The mediate disputes, the function of Department of Justice. They facilitate community development, the function of economic development. They coordinate local strategic initiatives, the function of national government. They engage investors, the function of trade and investment entities of government. They manage land allocation, the function of Department of Housing. They respond to a lot of community needs. And in many instances, they are already performing elements of town management without the formal mandate, without the resources, without the support or budget required to do so effectively. In some instances, you have traditional authorities being responsible for more than 100 villages, population exceeding around 300,000 with no infrastructure and budget. The question therefore becomes, how do we fully explore the developmental potential of traditional governance within our modern democratic framework? This is not an argument against municipalities. It is an argument against constitutional governance. It is an invitation to explore whether there's a more effective partnership model between traditional institutions and local government. A model that recognizes the reality on the ground. A model that empowers local leadership. A model that accelerates development. A model that brings decision-making closer to communities. The objective must never be about power. The objective must never be about transactions. The objective must always be development. Ladies and gentlemen, history teaches us that nations rise when leadership rises. Communities prosper when vision is matched by execution. And societies transform when ordinary people refuse to accept the status quo. We read Dr. Martin Luther King, who once spoke of a dream. Our own Nelson Mandela spoke of a dream. But today, South Africa does not need another dream. We have a Vision 2030. The question, therefore, before us is whether we possess the courage, discipline, and collective will to execute it. Whether we are willing to move beyond reports into action, beyond conferences into implementation, beyond promises and into delivery. Because future generations will not judge us by the strategies we wrote. They will judge us by the communities we built. They will judge us by the opportunities we created. They will judge us by whether a child born in rural Guyana, whether a child born in rural Malomale, whether a child born in rural Maine had the same chance to succeed as a child born in Sandton, as a child born in Bryanston, as a child born in Bedfordshire. This is the true measure of development. As we commence today's dialogue, I encourage our panelists to engage openly, challenge assumptions, share your experiences, offer solutions, and think boldly. Because the future for communities will not be determined by government alone, nor by traditional leaders alone, nor by business alone, nor by universities alone. It will be determined by our collective ability to align around a common purpose and execute relentlessly. The gap between where we are and where we aspire to be is not inevitable. It can be closed. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce the first theme for the day. In our theme, we look at the role of traditional leadership. And I'm going to ask Denice Manganye to lead this discussion in terms of the role of traditional leadership particularly the issue of the mandate that they've been given by government without any resources.
Thank you very much again, Manganye. The issue you have introduced is something that is very much close to my heart. Because when I was General Secretary of Controlesa, we were dealing with this issue, especially before the first local government elections of 2000. I remember when Sidney Mufamadi was minister then, it came to a situation where the date of the elections have been postponed 3 times because we couldn't agree with government on the role of traditional leadership in the communities. It is indeed very, very important to ensure that as traditional leaders, we need to be brought together, we need to come together with government, from local government, provincial government, national government, to talk about what development how it has to happen within our areas. Legislation has to change. If you see the Constitution, chapter 12, when it talks about traditional leadership, it talks about recognition of traditional leadership, but it doesn't give effect as to how it has to operate. You know, if you look at local government, there is a chapter on the local government, and they come down to legislation to stipulate how the municipalities must function, but none of that exists within the traditional institution. So it created a serious problem. We were, as traditional leaders, requested to participate in local municipalities, but without a vote. How do you go and become effective in a municipal setup? You give thoughts, you discuss, you agree, but when decisions have to be taken, your vote doesn't count because you are not a member, you are just an ex-officio member. So most of us decided not to attend such meetings because it's a waste of time. I'd rather stay home, give my thoughts to the municipalities, they decide. Remember, municipalities operate wall to wall. In other words, whether you have a farm, your own farm, or your own house, you fall under municipality. But that doesn't mean the municipality owns the land. It doesn't own the land. The land belongs to the people. All this time, we're taken as minors because you actually don't own the land. The land is owned by the state. If you want to develop your area, you get a community resolution. It still has to go to the Minister of Land Affairs or Rural Development to give effect to that development to take place. So there has been difficulties. You come up with projects. You identify a piece of land in your area that you want to develop. It goes to the municipality. The municipality says, no, sell us the land. We'll develop for you. Imagine, there's no way a municipality will have money to do development. The municipality is there to make sure that all the requirements for development should take place. So that's where the issue of corruption comes in. Because if you allocate a piece of land to the municipality, they go and negotiate with the developer, and there's always a kickback. So, unfortunately, with me in my area, I refuse. We cannot give a municipality land to develop. We can develop ourselves. We can identify who the developers are going to be, so that everything must come down to the people. We have to own and do. The tribal land is not for sale. Tribal land must remain with the community. Presently, we don't even have title deeds. So that title deeds is held by the minister. Still, there's no change. During colonial powers, during apartheid, even during now, our own government refuses to give us title deeds. Why? We don't know. There's a lot that is not right. Even if you are given land to develop or a title deed, you are told that you own the surface. You don't own the minerals. The minerals belong to the state. I tend to differ with that aspect. If you're looking at Northwest, the Bafokeng, they were very fortunate in that when they bought the land, initially, the title deed also included the mineral rights. That's why they were able to get the Impala company to partner with them, and they were successful. They are developing, they developed their land. They are even able to put in all the infrastructure. Government will just come in with, for instance, the clinic need to be built. They don't go to government to give them money. They have the money to do so. They go to government only to make sure that they pay the nurses and the doctors who come there and provide the medicine. So this is how it has to be. Let the owners, the true owners of the land, be the ones who must lead in the development. Manganye, this panel discussion comes at the right time. On the 30th of May, there was a launch of the centenary of the Kruger National Park. In other words, as you know, the Kruger National Park was proclaimed in 1926. It's 100 years now. So it's going to be a continuous celebration for a whole year until May of next year. And fortunately, some parks in the Kruger National Park have seen it imperative that the 100 years of the existence of the Kruger National Park, that was the centenary of disposition. Some of ourselves, the Minga and the Maluleke people, were dispossessed of their land for the past 100 years. This cannot continue. We have to make sure that the community benefits. And as you probably know, 80% of the Kruger National Park is in the Limpopo province. There are a lot of opportunities that can happen inside the Kruger National Park in terms of tourism, other infrastructures. So we want to make sure that this time around we are involved not only in executing, but even at the board, the SunParks board. We have to be there because it's our land. Fortunately, when the Swiss missionaries came and started going through this country, they produced a map in 1903 called the Sulpansberg. If you look at that map, you can see Minga written in bold letters. We regard that map as a title deed. In other words, the land belongs to us, even though it has been proclaimed as a national park. So we want to make sure that there is effective collaboration. We have to be involved in whatever happens within there to make sure that our people benefit. So the issue of local government and traditional leadership must be looked differently, because we cannot go on like this way. Municipalities come and say, okay, this when we develop this, we have to be the people with the final say. Can't be that. We need to make sure that the traditional leaders or rural who call ourselves royal leaders, not traditional leaders. We are royal leaders, the true leaders of the people, because we have the land. The land issue is very critical. It cannot be left the way it is. It also brings me to the first, when you look at the Constitution, we have the preamble which says South Africa belongs to all who live in it. It cannot be. That's why today we're seeing a lot of problems with undocumented people. South Africa belongs to bona fide people who were born South Africans and those who are in the country legally. So obviously what is happening now, unfortunately, it's taking a different route. If we can change even the preamble to say the land belongs to bona fide South Africans. In other words, those who are born in South Africa and those who are in the country legally, then we're talking a different story. The issue of border management. You recall, Manganye, that way back when Vali Musa was still the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, there was an event where the fence between South Africa and Mozambique in the Kruger National Park was removed to allow animals to freely roam between South Africa and Mozambique, the so-called Greater Kruger Transfrontier Park, to create such a park. We hail that situation as important, but today, because there is no fence, people talk about porous South Africa. That one, the situation there inside the Kruger is not just porous, there is no fence. Now, if there is no fence, if there is no control, how do you regulate the people who come in and go out? So the issue must be relooked to make sure that we have fences. I mean, when we read the Bible, there was the Jericho wall. Protection is very important to the community. Because what's happening now, people who come in our villages, steal cattle, drive them through the Kruger National Park, poison the animals, the lions and everything, into the neighboring countries. You can't let that happen. So, government, traditional leaders, and people who are involved in such institutions like SANPACs have to come together and make sure that we look into all these challenges and come out. I can tell you, in 2030, maybe something better will be in place. Yeah. So in summary, the issue of traditional leadership, participate in local municipalities must be changed to make sure that there's effective communication and decision making as far as rural development is concerned.
Thank you, Ndabezitha. Sure, Ndabezitha, you're raising very important issues, particularly the issue of royal leaders being custodians of the land. And I also do know that almost 40% of South African citizens are found in rural South Africa. And rural South Africa is governed by your traditional governance model. Yet, policies are not aligned from national, provincial, and local government level. There are other issues, allocation of budgets, to ensure that you are able to implement the necessary programs. So the question, therefore, is if traditional leaders are excluded from formal planning and budgeting systems, how are we to achieve this NDP? How are we to ensure that we attract foreign investors? And how are we to ensure that we stimulate economic growth? I ask this question looking at Dr. Elan.
Thanks very much. I think the call by the royal leaders is a very important call of reviewing our public policy that give us approach to the responsibilities in relations to social services. I call them social services because of these particular reasons. Our integrated development plan, which we apply in our municipalities, speak to issues of housing, electricity, water, sanitation, health, and all that. And royal leaders have got also a direct role in that. It is indeed very disempowering to get together in the name of wanting to work together for development and implementing our national development plan. But when it comes to crucial moments, you say, royal leaders, you are ex officio, so you cannot vote. It's a hypocrisy to say your views, someone else can take them serious and vote on, while you, the owner or the generator of those views, are not participating. And I am not blaming anyone in this regard, but I'm emphasizing the importance to understand the National Development Plan, our integrated development plan within the context of public policy. Just the last one, so we understand. Public policy has got 4 elements. One is distributive. When you talk about budgets, when you talk about infrastructure, that can be done and done hypocritically so without understanding the essence of communities if royal leaders do not participate fully are ex officio. So the distribution of resources of budget can be not addressing or matching the needs. The second one is a redistribution. I'm sorry to take time on this because it is very important, when we really mean business about closing the gap between our plans, our dreams, and the implementation. It's a redistribution. This element of the policy acknowledges that resources before, whether during apartheid or immediately after democracy, resources before were not equitably distributed. Therefore, it is important to redistribute. But there is no political will to carry this element of public policy. You will see that it's because people have their analysis say redistribution will create conflict. But they are quick to say royal leaders have no ownership on the land, which is a serious infrastructure. But when we talk of redistribution, therefore, there will be conflict. I think this is what also led United Nations not to review borders after decolonization, because United Nations acknowledged that if we were to review borders, we'll create our own conflict in Africa. Then the third one is regulatory, which today is very popular, this element of public policy of regulatory. That's when people will talk about corruption and identify certain sectors to be corrupt, particularly sectors that are run by Africans. Corruption in itself is not an action of an individual, but it is an outcome of a system that we have put in place. I mean, if we say royal leaders are ex-officials, already we have set a process on a corrupt level because it's not participatory. So, the important one, which is the call of the royal leaders, and I hope progressive municipalities are making the same call, it is what we call constituent element of the policy. This is where you acknowledge that every constituency, royal, political, education, communities, business, have got important input to make in the development. And for it to be important, to be made, and to be effective, I must also have powers to push for that. You can't say I'm an ex-official when I had to push. I think I wanted to emphasize on that from the policy perspective. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. Clearly, the message and the question being asked here is how should traditional leadership structures be integrated into proper municipal governance and be integrated into development planning. And I'm going to ask the following panelists, Mr. Mosenga Mofi and Mr. Chilezi, to come in here, because with the 2 points made by the visitor, there's one that relates to the contribution of traditional councils to economic development, yet they do not have the proper enabling instruments to implement economic plans. And the visitor referred to 100 years of underdevelopment, which started during the colonial rule. And 1947, the apartheid system was introduced, underdevelopment continued. And it's been more than 30 years now under the current government. Our people are still experiencing challenges in as far as development is concerned. The question, therefore, that's been asked: has rural South Africa been properly integrated into the mainstream economy of South Africa? And if so, why do we have policies contradicting themselves? Policies are not enabling, they are disempowering.
Thank you, Mr. Manganye. I think the first issue really for me, and in response to concerns that were raised by the two speakers, then one, we need to acknowledge that public policy is very dynamic. Public policy execution very dynamic. The institutional framework that is currently in place, it's an institutional framework that was negotiated and agreed to almost 10 years ago. And there's never been a thorough review of the effectiveness of that framework. And I want to go further and say there were specific challenges, needs, requirements that needed to be implemented as a result of the transition from where we were to our ideal state where we wanted to be as a country. Very transformative initiatives. And that was also followed by the institutional framework that had to be there. What I mean, the governance model that was supposed to have been in place. In fact, that was put in place. Now, I am very concerned, and I really want South African society to really look at this in detail and critically. You have national departments, provincial departments, local government. And throughout the years, there's been a mushrooming of various institutions that are supposed to execute one or the other activity. We've ended up having a country where we administer bureaucratic detail. In terms of the benchmarks, there is no country currently, at least benchmarking with the developed world, of so many institutions that are executing policy implementation. South Africa it's one of those countries where the resources are basically gobbled up by the bureaucracy. And this is shocking. The more bureaucracy we have in support of reality, the more bureaucracy we have, the more distance we have with the government. And in fact, public policy ends up being driven by the interests of the bureaucracy itself. I can tell you now, having been in government, that has been the biggest frustration. Let's look at the municipalities and how many entities are there just to deliver. And I can tell you, and we need to also let the previous dispensation, we must critically appraise and say, but what worked in the previous dispensation and what doesn't work? What didn't work? What changes? You had a model where you had 4 provincial administrations. A province, there was an administrator at the provincial level, accounting to a political structure national. You never had this myriad of political structures throughout the system, which basically blocks development. You can't have political structure at national level, provincial level, even at municipal level. One of the biggest challenges that we are having now in terms of failure to deliver services is the infrastructure. Look at the metros, what is happening. It's the government. At the heart of it is the governance model, which basically has increased to such an extent that we end up not even knowing what are we doing. We forget, and that's why I keep on saying that development, infrastructure programs, has to respond to specific needs on the ground. And how do we measure? We measure about how many people have access to 1, 2 services, how many jobs have been created. And in this context, if we say we have to link, if we say the Collins Chabane municipality is supposed to be the gateway to Kruger National Park, what are the building blocks to get there? But I can tell you the bureaucracy, it's national, provincial, and then you have traditional leadership, right? Traditional leadership is based. They understand. In fact, if you deliver water in a locality, the person who's really like to benefit, because the people are being empowered, their quality of life improves. It's traditional leadership. So I just needed to highlight that point, my concern around just the bureaucracy and how it gobbles resources. The current public service salary bill, what we pay in billions, over 60% goes to personnel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Helane, Mr. Musengwa. Before I hand over to Tilisi to respond to some of the challenges you've articulated, I think it's very important that we quantify some of these problems we are talking about The Auditor General's 2024 local government audit outcomes report shows that only 41 out of South Africa's 257 municipalities achieved clean audit, while financial management, accountability, and service delivery weaknesses remain widespread. National Treasury further reported that 162 municipalities were in financial distress during 2024, and that 113 municipalities adopted unfunded budgets. Clearly, that highlights the systemic governance and sustainability challenge. Now, to the point raised by the visitor, Tatani Helani and Mr. Mofi, and we also have figures to confirm that. The figures from Auditor General's Office and National Treasury do confirm that there is a level of instability in our municipalities, dysfunctional, and some of them, in terms of their approach to IDP development, are not aligned at all with provincial growth strategies, a national development plan. These are some of the challenges articulated by our panelists. But the most important issue here has to do with planning. And I'm going to ask Mr. Chilis to come in here. You've been involved in town planning, regional planning. People don't appreciate the complexities that are involved in the work that you do, the number of legislative instruments that you have to deal with, number of stakeholders that you have to consult with, compliance with national and local government policies, and consultation with investors, and a number of decision points along the way that you have to facilitate in order for you to achieve a simple thing like having a town plan, a township development plan approved. So can you take us through some of the challenges that you've experienced as a town planner who's operated in this region of Limpopo?
Thanks, Denice. You see, I think as all the stakeholders and those with the powers to deliver, I think we forget what I can call a natural mandate. One of the mandates of the national mandate is to provide services to the people. So we can go all over, create this policy, review it, but if it is not being implemented to serve people, then we're going to have a challenge. So there are so many strategies, plans, and policies that are lying in government drawers, gathering dust. And when they were prepared, there was a lot of resources that were spent to prepare those policies. But they can't be implemented. One, because there are no people or resources to implement such policies. So it becomes a very big challenge. But my worry is that people on the ground are the ones that are suffering. We have our national government, provincial government, the local government, but mostly our tribal or traditional authorities. They're the ones who deal with people every day, on everyday basis, daily basis. If you visit a tribal authority or traditional office one day, just go and visit and see the queue of people from different spheres coming to consult most of them, they'll be looking for land. They've got dreams, they've got plans to say, I want to build a spaza, I want to build a mortuary, I want to build a guest house, a lodge. Now, this brings me to an issue of the interaction and alignment between the traditional authorities and the local municipalities. Now, that also translates to the issue of land ownership, which Ndabezitha has really talked about. The land ownership in South Africa, see whether the land is private or is state-owned or is trust land. Now, here we're not talking about private, we're not talking about more of state, we're talking of state land here. State land, when you check in those title deeds, it's written RSA or Republic of South Africa, wherein the minister is the custodian. He actually owns all the land. And those pieces of land are allocated to tribal authorities or traditional authorities. So I feel like somehow there's a disjunction, there's a disconnect which needs to be fixed. Because let's say Ndabezitha will also come in on that with due respect. An investor identifies a business to be done somewhere else, in a land, in a tribal area or traditional area. Now, that piece of land needs to be developed. Now, there's a process, a long process. That long process can be very lengthy to an extent that it even discourages an investor because it's very long. He comes to a space, he wants to develop a piece of land. That development will play part in terms of local economic development, create jobs to local communities. The municipality, on the other hand, will create revenue. So everyone is going to benefit from that piece of development. But let's look at the procedure. You can't just come with bulldozers and start building, doing the foundations and start building. He needs to firstly get the land rights in place. Now he will go to the tribal authority. The tribal authority will say, no, it's fine, it's okay. That piece of land, you will give us this much. Then they give me a PTO, permission to occupy. We will have to discuss about the value of that PTO. Now, he gets a PTO, and now with the PTO, you want to go to the bank to look for money. The bank will look at him and they say, what is this? He said, no, I've got a PTO, I want to develop a piece of land. They'll say, no, we can't give you a loan based on this. It's one challenge. Now, the Department of Rural Development has outlined a process that needs to be followed when you want a land disposed or allocated. Ndabezitha talked about community resolution service. Then you will go to the department. I will try to cut it short, it's a long process. Go to the department, you make an application for land acquisition. And that piece of, that application that we are doing is not final disposal where you are going to get a title deed or whatever. They are going to lease it to you for a period of 50 years. Then you will start operating. But then you still have to go follow other processes. You must come up with a valuation report to value that piece of land. Then the minister will process the issue of lease with the developer with a special purpose vehicle. Now, there is also the municipality on the other side now. The municipality has SPLUMA, Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act, which has said we need to have a bill, Spatial Planning and Land Use Management bylaw. So the bylaws outlines what needs to be done from the beginning to the end. Yes. So now, in that bylaw, they will say, no, this is a township establishment process or a land use application. You need to comply with different processes. You must have environmental studies done, you must have geological studies done, geohydrology, traffic impact study, all the feasibility studies, which is okay, they must be done. Because you can't have the development without having proper planning. But my challenge in this regard, the process is very long. The process can even take 4 years. And remember, if you have, maybe you have managed to have a guarantee at the bank to say, we can fund you. The bank work with time frames, they move with time. Before you know it, the bank will tell you, hey, unfortunately, we can't assist you again. So we have that challenge where I feel that they still need a need of policy reform. We need to have policies that encourage speed development, speed up development. We cut all the red tapes. There's a lot of red tapes. You send an application to the municipality. It takes a lot of time to be processed. And yet, on the other hand, the municipality will be saying, we want to facilitate and assess development quickly. So, there's a lot of challenges that are happening when it comes to planning. So, you end up having people developing without following procedures and processes. And this leads to illegal land use. It leads to unplanned settlements. And it leads to issue of services backlogs. So those are the issues that government needs to find a way to deal with it. But integration and alignment with traditional authorities, because traditional authorities are the ones who are staying with communities every day. So the traditional authorities, as I was thinking one day, is that maybe they need to be capacitated. They need to have proper structures. You go to a tribal authority, you find that the Ndavetsita Utsamena engineer who advises him every day. Utsamena a town planner. Utsamena environmentalist. So that if people are saying they want to have a development, there will be proper coordination and advice. So the issue of master plans is one thing I've been thinking about to say. What if Ndavetsita we can have in your area, you have a master plan to say, my area ends here. This is the master plan. This is where I want residential development to go. This is where I want industrial development to be. This is where the tourism precinct must be. So that plan must be aligned also with the spatial development framework of the municipality. There must be that alignment. And then with that master plan, if the tribal authority or traditional authority is capacitated, you can even go to the funders and look for funds to implement programs and plans emanating from that master plan. So alignment between local municipalities, traditional authorities, and also other spheres of government and stakeholders is very important. But the challenging one is land ownership. Land ownership is impacting a lot in development in rural communities. If you look now, most municipalities don't have land anymore. And they want to spread their towns. So they hit a wall because they get into the land that belongs to the traditional authorities. Now, government must start looking at issue of donating land to entities like traditional authorities and municipalities, so that the land can be available immediately when there's a need for development. But now land is not available. Guyana, if you look at it and check Guyana municipalities, do they still have land for development? I doubt if they still do. So our communities, because there's lack of such policies and stuff, the allocation of land is just happening sporadically. It's just happening. But there are no services. Instead of having a barrack line which supply water to the businesses and residential development, people are doing boreholes because they want life to move. They're not going to be waiting for the municipality to come after 30 years. Budget is being made. You look at the IDPs of the municipality, you find that the municipality has budgeted certain amount of money, but when it comes again on the next review next year, that project is not there. You ask yourself if it was implemented in the paper, not on the ground only. Because you go to the ground, there's no project. How it was reviewed, we don't know. So there are so many issues that need to happen, and land issue needs to be addressed in order to enhance development in traditional areas and in the municipal space. I will share more on that matter. Thanks.
Thank you. Again, looking at all the three spheres of government, national, provincial, and local, I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of a businessman who's got a PTO, is applied, submit an application to the Department of Mineral Resources for acquisition of mineral rights, has developed a business plan, and done the necessary feasibility studies. The project is viable. And he approaches one of the financial institutions with that business plan. It needs to be funded. He's got the support of the royal leaders. And this project will create jobs and contribute toward the economic growth of the area. Now, I'm bringing you in, Mr. Lamini, on this matter, for you to take us through some of the challenges that you've experienced as a businessman. Because you are the people who spend time, money, putting together all these documents. You've been sent from pillar to post, and yet, when you look back, you spend millions, and your project hasn't moved an inch. Can you take us through some of your challenges?
Firstly, my prepared response or comment on what has been said and on what I prepared myself, to participate in it is on point 6.1. 6.1, which is to do with local economic development. But I agree to what Mr. Chilizi said, and which leads to my belief that economic development is intertwined with traditional authorities, because the thing that you want most as a businessman or entrepreneur, you need to have land to be able to implement your business ideas. And the land is owned by royal traditional leaders or leadership. Now, as he explained, the long road to attaining the land that you intend developing for public good, although it is taken by others as for private reasons, but all or many of the businesses have been created for public good. And the benefit or public benefit is bigger than the profit that it yields, unfortunately. So, looking at how we can actually dissect the Vision 2030, we've got to look at this as a brilliant document that was crafted by government, which actually resulted in giving us a coherent, way of looking at things that can be done for public good in the country. And there are good things, there are successes, there are failures or underperformances, and there are, let me say, solutions, to the problems. Now, looking at what best things, what we got from the crafting of the Vision 2020 NDP. As I mentioned earlier, that it resulted in giving us a long-term vision for South African development. And at the same time, it gave us an opportunity to diagnose the country's challenges versus development agenda that we have in South Africa. And again, it gives us an opportunity to understand this strengthening, or it resulted in strengthening the democratic institutions and the governance thereof. We'll agree that before, if this was not mentioned, we would not have where today we see even the highest authorities coming under scrutiny legally. And, in African countries, definitely they would not appear in courts. But in South Africa, we have that, which is a plus for the, democratic institution. And we have, through it, social protection, whereby there are social grants that are expanded, and the aim thereof is to alleviate poverty, and is to give people dignity. But it's never enough. We look again at the provision of healthcare services to the public. We look again to access to education for all. These are things that were not there prior to the crafting of this document or in the previous regime. But now all these successes, we are proud, we go with our heads up, but there are gaps within. Now, which are the gaps according to me? I just did a short summary of these things. I did not go into details. Now, we find there's a big realignment, as Mr. Shirizi articulated here, the big realignment, let's say realign, we need realignment in the all government levels, from national, provincial, and even local municipality. I would say it should extend to the traditional authorities. Technically, traditional authorities are part of government structures. They are funded by government. The leaders of traditional authorities are paid by government, their own person. So therefore, what would you expect? You will expect them to assist government in all ways to achieve the visions of NDP 2030. They are part of government. We acknowledge, what the Honorable Chief or the Honorable Head, Hosi Shilumba Minga said here this morning. And I was surprised, and I respect him more today because he mentioned something that very few traditional leaders will concede to, that traditional leadership doesn't own land. We go around as business, we go around, looking for land for development, and the local chief will tell you, this is my land. This is what I expect from you, this is my land. But here is the honorable leader, in our province, putting it straight that we don't have custodians. And we hold this land in trust. We represent government amongst the communities that we lead, which I think to me is very, I respect you more, Ndabizita. And I've learned something from what you said, your presentation. Now back to the aim, the gaps, that you have is that now local economic development is there, but it does not deliver. or it hasn't delivered on the expectations as articulated in the NDP 2030 vision. Now, there are reasons for that. One, there is not enough land for development in the rural communities. As Mr. Chirize gave an example of the local municipality. The local municipality does not have land today. It can't grow the town. They don't even know where will the town grow. Now, back to special planning. We don't have an area which is there to establish an industrial park, because an industrial park will yield jobs that we need. Not only to all Guyana or all South Africans. And the jobs will be there for the youth as well. We know that today youth are not employed. But still, we can't be saying that government doesn't provide jobs, our youth are not employed. But now, is the youth ready for employment? Now that takes you now to the education that he said. You are university city. Is it providing the skills that the labor market needs? Are you answering in all what you give? We talk today, it's fashionable to have a TVET in every town. But now, why are you having them? You'll actually establish them until the point where they've saturated the whole country. But now, you find that most of them, they are teaching children office administration, not critical skills. The ones that will give you critical skills are very few. Now, we need to ensure that the education institutions that we have, they answer to the call from the market and labor. One of the gaps here is the traditional authorities acting as anti-developmental in their approach. They have land, but now the challenge that they have, they price the land out of the market because there is no value in exercises. They look at it, we know that the value of price depends on the location. The physical address is very important in property development. Where it is and how does it impact and how does it relate to the surroundings. And the value of the developments around that particular land will determine the price as well. But now you find this barren land outstanding and somebody tells you, we can give you this piece of land for 500,000 rands. Then you ask, does it include installation of services? He gets scared, he says he doesn't know. Now, we believe as business that land acquires value based on the deployment of resources on that particular pocket. That's where it becomes valuable. Now, that brings us closer to the issue that was articulated by my colleague here about the relationship or realignment between traditional authorities and municipalities. Municipalities has the capacity to install services within pockets of land. The traditional leadership has the land. And the traditional leadership has been taking care of the land and the environment. But we say they should release the land to the hands of the municipality. And the traditional leadership will say, you are going to sell the land. Why don't I remove the middleman and sell the land for development directly? Which sounds good in terms of money, but there is a gap. A gap is that very few traditional authorities can install services on undeveloped land because of the price. And one, because their ownership documentation cannot be used as collateral for any fundraising. This is what Mr. Chirize said. There are structures that we have in government, entities that have been, established by government to fund trust land or all developments in trust land. We have the development agencies. We have, I think, DBSA does that. But now, for commercial reasons, I cannot buy that land and go to the bank and seek funding because they are not going to fund it. So we need to deal with this in order to close the gaps, and then that will lead us to realizing all the pillars, we turn them into action, execute them as stated in the vision of 2030 NPA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maluleke. A very, very important point that you are raising, particularly challenges experienced by business enterprises at this level. But what I like is how you articulated the challenges in terms of your interaction with the municipalities, because they are the ones responsible for issuing licenses. Traditional councils are involved in terms of issue of PTOs. But then you are disempowered if you don't have approvals, as in for licenses for you to participate meaningfully in the economy of this country. At the same time, for any business model to be implemented, you need water infrastructure, you need road infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, and so forth. So for that to happen, you are also asking if other spheres of government are involved, local municipalities in supporting traditional authorities. This is now where development agencies need to come in and look at the situation holistically and say, how do you empower a business enterprise based in rural South Africa? Do they even understand the challenges that you are faced with? Why do credit committees just dismiss your business applications without really going your day-to-day challenges? Because you operate in an environment that is totally different to a person who lives in Sandton in Branston, right? Now, I'm raising this so that I can bring in Mr. Mofumusema and Tatane Helman in as far as economic growth is concerned. But I'm going to paint this scenario. We live in a world where, particularly South Africa, our economic architecture is a consumption-driven economy. We don't produce, we consume. And I believe that's also happening here in rural South Africa. We're building an economy that encourages consumption. One, it looks like it's very easy to set up a shopping center here. That obviously is targeting beneficiaries of social grants. And yet unemployment remains high. We seem to have a system that encourages and that makes it easier for big companies like your ShopRite of this world to enter the rural economy and the township economy, and in so doing, killing local businesses. But there's nothing at the national level that says, how do we protect the interest, the business interest of the local business enterprises? And then how do we ensure that we start setting up industrial parks that are going to stimulate production as opposed to consumption in the local economy? And to do that, we need to start asking questions to say, we must start buying products that we don't consume, we don't produce, right? To do that, you need businessmen like yourselves, Mr. Malik, to raise this topic and elevate this issue to a national level and ask what is the role of a Department of Trade and Industry, for example. What is the role of DBSA? What is the role of other agencies in government in as far as funding models that have been packaged and that have been sold to business people based in rural South Africa? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Nsema, and then Mr. Helen.
It's so sad that we don't invest in infrastructure that enhances our productive capacity. And it's true that there's been a mushrooming of consumerist-driven infrastructure development projects, and we've made a very classical. But I think for me, really, it's if you want quick results, we would always pursue the shortest possible. I want to make an example. We always say that the infrastructure investment must stimulate economic growth, jobs, attract investment. And that's the key objective as outlined in the national development. I want to make an example. And I think this is the model that most people should learn from. What has happened with us, there was a rolling stock renewal program. And the easiest and the quickest solution for us, there's been pressure when I was at Plaza to get new rolling stock because of the age rolling stock, which was no longer servicing the needs of the transport needs of the users. And the easiest and the quickest way was simply to go out and procure new train sets, cheaper, they are all done, and then basically deploy them on our rail lines. But there was a more difficult one to say, no, we simply cannot do that. What we need to do is to invest in the capacity locally to produce these trains. The process took longer, but I can tell you now, there is a plant that has been established, which is now fully operational. It has created jobs. And if you can look at the revival of that town, Niger, where this plant is, remember also, there's a downstream benefit for businesses in that area. You can see now, simply because of the establishment of that plant, there's a lot of manufacturing capacity, manufacturing businesses that have developed as a result of the establishment of that plant. Housing, there's been lots of housing development projects. Now, this is the model that is ideal. This is the model that we should follow, and even at local government level. The obsession with quick results, unfortunately, is not sustainable. In the long term, we leave a legacy where we've put in money, but we realize the results in the short period, but in the long term, it's not a sustainable solution. So I think, for me, I'm just making that example to say this is the model that must really inform how we invest in infrastructure.
What I like about this platform, and I hope going forward we can have more of these, it simplifies complex issues. Anyone can relate to the discussions that we're having here. And that's a big step to development. because it mobilizes us to want to know and understand the plan as it is, National Development Plan 2030 and our integrated development plans. So this is one element that I like. But going back to the question, already this particular platform is sending a very serious message to say let's take ownership of where we want to be. And in assessing the performance of our national development plan and also our local plans, the integrated ones, we have identified what works, what does not work. And I need to give an example so we can relate more. I have given examples of university cities that are there. In South Africa, I have given an example as Stellenbosch. There was an intention, a plan, and mobilization of community, of politicians, business people to say, let's generate a revenue, develop our economy through education. Let's create education corridors. The Greater Giyani municipality has just earned a university campus. What is our plan in taking advantage of that? Can we create corridors where students will stay already in availing accommodation, its business, its generation of money? Because the campus itself that it's here does not only serve people from here. They are people who will be coming from different areas. Hence, public higher education is administered nationally. Let's take advantage of that. Number two, our transport facility, including, I understand, the developed airport. Let us structure them to support the concept of a university city. And transport will generate, the infrastructure will generate economy, and it will also sustain itself. Okay, let's look at the University of Johannesburg and Wits. They have taken over Braamfontein. They have taken over Auckland Park. They have taken over Melville. Those universities, those municipalities there, they are sustained through economy generated by business coming out of education. There was a very important question of a curriculum. To say, what are we offering? Are we offering what the market wants? The biggest message of this question that I get is, let's take ownership of structuring offerings, curricula, in institutions that are in our municipalities. Why didn't we take advantage of the science center, which was here? Because it was a good corridor created between Science Center, Kedo, Giyani High, it's long I've been in Giyani, I might forget. But there was an academic corridor which had generated money. Now we need businesses to sit together with the university to say, as you will be having students in 2027, how many students are you going to have? What is the capacity you have in the university to accommodate these students? Then we create a corridor in Giyani to say, this is an academic corridor. It increases safety because now you contextualize safety around that area to support students. Even business structure. develops, you won't just be having shebeens all around. In planning the business, you take in cognizance, you need sustainable business, but that support education. You will need a bookstore, you will need a technology, you will need this and this. And in about 10 years or so, economy generated by education can sustain and develop the Greater Guyana and go somewhere else. Let me just quickly just give example. Okay, before I give this example, one of the other issues that I have identified here, and I would want to encourage all of us, including those that are listening, to look at, there is misalignment of expectation and capacity that we have to can deliver. Plans that are put there and capacitating state into delivering those plans, here the message is saying there is misalignment. Participation in economy, there is an element of exclusion because of certain philosophical questions, land ownership, who owns land and all that. This needs to be looked at. And I would also encourage our municipalities to adopt one philosophy called development philosophy. What does it mean to simplify this? Let's agree we evolve and review. What we valued before might change. How we do things before might change. 2, to progress for the sake of every citizen and to have a sustainability element. Let me give those examples and then I hand over of economy that comes out of university, city, municipalities. One, it's what I would want to say, your education economy referring to mobilization of tuition fees, rural grant, because we are considered to be having a rural campus, and then student accommodation. It's, for example, around Braamfontein, Auckland Park, a year, those areas get 1.2 billion rand from NSFAS paying for accommodation in those areas. Then, all these infrastructure and accommodations will speak to the social services of the municipalities, electricity, water, sanitation. Then, if we have got a good system of collecting these taxes and rates, it's a revenue generation and it's billions. Supplementary economy, because of university city, I indicated road and air transport, retails and trading, telecommunication and technology. Migration economy, I'm calling this migration economy because you will have people coming for a relevant education here from other areas, which also speak to tourism, hospitality, sport recreation, art and culture out of university city. The last one is what I call development economy out of university city who can benefit. Why do we take advantages of this? You have young professionals who now join the class, who need accommodation, modern accommodation, build accommodation here, housing, urbanization, gas and petroleum, social business and services. And university city is sustainable, as I have given those examples.
Thank you. I will bring in the Bezit quickly, but Mr. Musang, go ahead before
I wanted to just highlight one very important point in relation to building productive capacity within a locality. And I wanted to use a local example. I've noted, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've noted that I think it's either the Guyana municipality or the College Chapel municipality has got approval from NERSA to build a solar plant, I think a 40 megawatt solar plant. Now here lies an opportunity. There's two options. There's a quick way to do it. The quick way is to import everything, build a solar plant, whoever does it, they leave, and provide support from IF. Or develop manufacturing capacity locally, train the youngsters to be able to build this, firstly to build the solar plant itself, but secondly to install in homes. But thirdly, to also continue with the post-installment support that is required. Not only that, also respond to private needs that may emerge in the entire region. So you can imagine the potential that we have. So I just wanted, because I wanted to make that example.
Yes.
And I thought it would be important to highlight it as one of those critical catalytic projects to invest in productive capacity locally.
Thank you, Mr. Nsim. You raised two important issues in terms of our approach to economic planning at the local level. Now, I want to bring in the visitor because Mr. Mzalana mentioned the importance of building capacity at the traditional authority level in terms of master planning. Now, for me, we cannot apply a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to development of traditional authorities. We look at the Minga royal dynasty in terms of land ownership, but we can also look at them in terms of their influence when it comes to the tourism corridor alone, right? We can look at the place in terms of the support required from an education point of view to boost and sustain tourism in that industry. And we can look at the Minga corridor and say, if they position themselves as a gateway to Kruger National Park, then let's ask strategic questions and say, from a road infrastructure point of view, what do they need? Water infrastructure, what do they need? Education, what is it that government can do, right, in support of their master plan? Now, on the one hand, you have this challenge that at the national level, there's packaging of one-size-fits-all solutions. And you think that by dropping a package at Minga to support sponsor shops, it will stimulate economic growth. With this approach, you miss the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that 20 years from now, the Minga corridor would want to have influence in how it grows its economy, right? And that is it. Take us through some of the challenges you've experienced in terms of trying to get buy-in from national government to support your vision for growing the tourism corridor in your area, support in terms of transport infrastructure, water infrastructure, and education.
Thank you, Dr. Manganye and the other panelists. Fortunately, we have in Minga, we have our own integrated development plan, which we have submitted in all three spheres of government: local, district, provincial, and national. But it seems to me that there's just no willingness to support us. I don't know why. Because we are really strategically located at the corner of with South Africa. You know, we also have an airport located inside the Kruger National Park, but 3 kilometers from the Punda Maria Gate, which used to be a military airstrip. We had a vision, you know. They always say people, where there's no vision, people perish. But where there's vision, provision is guaranteed. So out of that, we prepared all our plans, our concept of what we want to do, and came up with an Minga integrated development plan, which we submitted. But it's difficult to get funding. I don't know. We went to the DBSA. DBSA say, yeah, in terms of legislation, we can't support you directly. You have to go through the municipality. We went to Colin Chavan to say, here is our integrated development plan. DBSA is prepared to pay everything, even to do the studies, the necessary studies that are needed, environmental impact, all tech, geotech, all the studies that are needed. I don't know. There's no political will to do that. The airport, fortunately, a new minister in Jimutsa, we went to see her in Pretoria, and we told her about this, that Joe Mutisi, the first minister of defense, gave us a letter in 1994, shortly after the elections, to say the airport is no longer going to be used for military purposes. We can use it for whatever commission. Obviously, tourism comes into the picture. I'm telling you, it took us from 1994 until last year, because we went to Treasury to help us to get concession to utilize that airport, because we believe the airport will be a catalyst for bringing other developments. She gave us a letter to confirm that the airport would never be used or would be used for military purposes. Just two weeks ago, the Department of Transport came to inspect the airport, and they're very happy about it. So they can give us a concession. And because the airport is located in the land that belongs to us, as I stated before, it cannot be opened. It cannot be done through an open tender. It has to go to an unsolicited tender. This is what Sunparks said, must prepare a business case. And this is where we are. Very soon that airport will start redeveloping to actually make it an international airport, just like this Uza one, which is right inside the Kruger National. As I stated, 20% of the, or 80% of Kruger is in the Limpopo province. We are pushing for business, for tourism to be enhanced through this process. But the difficulty is actually that at local level and provincial level, they are slow in their thinking to come up and help us. We have given them the concepts, the plans are there. They should at least allocate funding to do some of the studies, because we don't have, as a traditional authorities, we're not being given budgets. So there's no way we can do it ourselves, to pay professionals like, geotech, like town planners. We don't have such facilities. So if somehow we can find a way of fast-tracking the process of doing all the necessary studies that are needed to establish this development. It will go a long way. As you know that I'm serving in the TUT Guyana campus social complex committee, and where the campus is located is land that belong to the home traditional authority, and therefore also donated additional 15 hectares to expand for future development. So there is, that can help. Businesses can help in putting accommodation for students. And the Minga traditional authorities also donated 20 hectares of land to have a satellite of TUT, Guyana campus there. So that even there we can start generating employment during construction. But unfortunately, most of our learners don't qualify to be admitted at TUT because they are subjects in its rendering. So we have to make sure that the choice of subjects is changed. It has to go with technology. Without technology, that's why I said it's a university of technology. It must start not at university level, it must start down there. So there has to be a lot of pushing to ensure that our learners take subjects which are in line with the institution. That way, I think we'll be able to enhance this university economy that we are looking at. I have also approached the visitor Njakanjaka to also make sure that it also applies for maybe ensure that Lemana, in the institution of Lemana, which has been vandalized, has been resuscitated. Make it also a satellite of TUT. Same with Tibumbe in Gogo and in Washani, That's where things can happen. It shouldn't just be Guyana, but all these areas which have been supporting Guyana. You might remember there used to be a campus already, a university those days. So I think there's a lot that can be done. In our areas, we can have an industrial, we can create industrial centers. Definitely, we have put it in our plans. So it's a question of funding. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we move closer to the last item on our program, I would like to give you an opportunity, panelists, to respond to the following. There's this picture that shows Guyana 2026. Malamolele, rural Malamolele 2026. On the other side, it's a futuristic city of Guyana 2050. Futuristic city of Malamolele. And I'm going to ask a very simple question.
based on your experience, expertise, wisdom, what would it take for us to come up with a vision? In 20 years' time, you want a city. How do we move from a planning approach that says, have a 3-kilometer ring road there, you open a healthcare center there, a school there? How do we move towards an integrated approach, master plan that leads to the actual development of city in rural South Africa? Your closing remarks. Let's start with Denice Manganye.
Thank you, Mr. Manganye. I sit in the local economic development committee for the local municipality. Rex and I serve there. My takeaway is what was presented by Mr. Helani. The answer to your question is a meeting of every stakeholder. Now, we will have to have two. The first one, it will be a meeting that was supposed to have been held, I think 6 months ago, when the good news were broken that TUT is going to open at the Giyani campus. Stakeholders should have met and look at the implication of the reopening of the campus, what it meant economically, and how we're going to access the opportunities that come with it, and get to know from the university side in 5 years where they will be, and align ourselves with that project. The second meeting, it will be to understand, after we've understood how Giyani will look, because the opening of the university says we have got a student community of, let's say, 5,000 in 3 years. Do we have the facilities to serve them? What is it that we need to? What does the university says? These are the things that you spoke about. He spoke about a restaurant, he spoke of. I see in the front of the entrance gate a neighborhood center which has got services that are not rendered within campus. But that should come from a meeting that we must have as stakeholders. All stakeholders, business, the railroad, whatever. Because the university will consume all those services that we're going to provide. So for me, is to, on the sidelines, I'll talk to Mr. Helani and say, can we arrange a meeting like that where we can come and motivate us? Thank you.
Thank you, Denice Manganye.
We're still on that beautiful picture there. Okay, yeah. You see, you can give one answer or one word answer. Only a will can make that happen. If we're not willing to develop these towns into cities, then it won't work. So it can only work with the alignment between different stakeholders. So you see, development cannot just happen, or a city cannot just happen. All these cities or towns that you see here in South Africa, they happen because of one resource or one catalyst, development catalyst. Say there's a mining stuff or some agricultural resource and stuff. So we have Giyani as it is now. The university has been launched or has been launched. So we must take advantage of that and use that as a catalyst. Use that as an anchor to say, how does it attract other opportunities?
Now we need to have a situation where the municipality, if they did not have that in their SDF or Spatial Development Framework, they need to start preparing a educational precinct development plan, which will then align and guide development. We don't need to have developments that are sprawling all over. It needs to be managed properly. I was happy to hear that this donation of land happening around the school. This will actually support the development of such facility. So there are a lot of funders and let's say funders out there who are willing to fund, but they cannot just fund. You see, when they grant funds for the developments to take place, they've got conditions. You see, this national, neighborhood development grant. A lot of towns have been developed because of that. If you see Tawani Mall as it is in Trento, it was as a result of neighborhood development grant. They took advantage. And look at it now. This is one of the busiest malls around. So I am saying it is possible for Giyani Malamlele to be a city. Only if we are willing, only if we integrate our strategies and plans. One of the greatest things will be infrastructure. We need to talk about our road infrastructure. How will it complement the development of city? We need to talk about water and sanitation. Are we going to have a city that is supported by boreholes? We have a lot of water resources around. There's a dam that I just opened not so long, Nandori. But there's also an irony. You see, you stay 2 kilometers from the dam, you don't have water. But there's a big dam next to you. So it's because there's no infrastructure. The articulation of infrastructure, there's no proper planning. So it is very easy and it is very doable if we are all willing to do it. DBSA and other funders, there can be a model that is created to have this city running. And our communities also, they need to be workshopped on what will be the outcomes. The primary outcome will be creating work opportunities. Our children need to be educated. The source, educational sources come closer to them. Instead of them to go to Pretoria or Cape Town, there's a school here next to their households. So it becomes much easier, and if the municipality stand up and say we are willing, if the provincial government stand up and say we are willing, if the traditional authorities stands up and say we are willing to have this happening, it's very possible. You see, another example is Tambo. There's a University of Venda. When after this, NSFAS has introduced the issue of student accommodation and stuff. There's booming concept of student accommodation. It's happening all over. Now we see the market being infiltrated by different beneficiaries. You will even see one of the government entities wanting to put a student accommodation, which to me is not right. Because you are supposed to allow a poor lady behind the university to build 3 rooms and be able to participate in the scheme. But you find a government entity which has money. It comes and builds for 4,000 beds. 4,000 rooms to serve students. Now the poor lady at the corner will not be able to participate. So the local economic development must be prioritized. People who are from the local areas need to be prioritized. But Mr. Denice, it is very possible to make this dream come true. The city can happen here in Giyani. You see, I also see now Polokwane is applying to be a metro, and also Rustenburg, they are doing that. Tando is also applying to be a city. So they need to meet a criteria which has been set down. Demarcation board needs to do the assessments and stuff. So it is doable if we start and make possible and proper engagements with those who are willing to, then it is possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chis. Yeah. The picture that I see is very, very attractive, and I can say is doable. We can do it. We have a proposal that we've put for rail infrastructure. After the announcement that the Premier of Limpopo and Gauteng have agreed to resuscitate the railway line between the Gauteng and Limpopo, we also have a vision to put up a rail infrastructure from Ketsi to Giyani to Malamlele to Minga, then over the Kruger National Park into Mozambique, creating a developmental corridor into Bilankulus in Mozambique. We are in discussion with the leadership of Mozambique, where they are developing a deep sea port in Bilankulu. And our idea is that, having seen what happened in 2021, when the N3 was blocked and the economic activity came to a standstill in the whole country, and now on the 30th of June, there's another planned shutdown. We have to look at alternatives. Our port of entries like Beitbridge, Libombo, Richards Bay, and Durban, there's congestion of trucks, So this development corridor will ease the congestion that I'm mentioning. It's doable. It is doable. It will make access very easy. So our project is actually road and rail, not just the rail. Road and rail from Muketsi, because ZZ2 won't have to take all the tomatoes to Gauteng. We put it on the rail straight to the airport. To the port, the deep sea port in Bilankulu, which is in the middle of Mozambique. Because presently the deep sea port is only in Maputo and Beira. So Bilankulu is in the middle. We're creating this and also addressing this issue of regional integration. So Giyani will definitely benefit. Sanral must think of creating a bypass. So when going to Malamlele from wherever, you don't have to go through Giyani town, you can bypass like it's happening. It has happened in Puluka. We need such, because I can tell you, month end is very difficult to travel here in Giyani. It's one road And you can spend, there's a day somebody spend about 3 hours just to pass Diani going to Malombe. So we need to urgently have a bypass, to fast track the economic activities. So those would be my concluding remarks on this issue.
Thank you, the visitor. Interestingly, the visitor, the man you're handing the mic to is a national transport policy expert. So I'm going to ask him a very direct question, and I hope in his closing remarks he'll address this issue. Mr. Mosema, how can railroad and public transport system be better integrated to stimulate regional economic growth, right? Particularly focusing on multimodal transport, freight logistics, passenger mobility, economic corridors that the visitor referred to, and most importantly, we are talking about regional economic integration. We are talking about intra-Africa trade. And when you look at it from that perspective, transport is a key enabler. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manganye. I was going to respond to that, but I'll focus on the question. I think one issue I really want to highlight is an opportunity that is presented to this province. I think the project that the visitor has alluded to, the Gauteng Limpopo high-speed rail, I think for me it's one of the most important catalytic projects, potential catalytic project that could really change Limpopo province. Firstly, if you look at the towns that it's supposed to connect, yes, this area it can serve more as a feeder. It can serve as an area that is linked to that main line. This is the first project of its kind, long distance. Remember, if you look at Gautrain is built on what we call standard gauge, which enables higher speeds. Now, this one is also going to be built on a standard gauge. It will enable higher speeds. So if you look at where the international rail system is moving now, if you look at China has used high-speed rail as a catalytic projects. They've used high-speed rail systems to develop most of their cities, but also to make China much smaller. If you look at China, how big it is, but China has got the best modern high-speed rail system in the world. And for us, we really need to move that direction. We need to be bold. But also, it doesn't benefit rail only. Remember, other transport modes will have to fit into the system itself. It is your taxis, it is your buses, it is your trucks. Because the envisaged system, it's both passenger and freight. So I see a huge opportunity there. And also I think it's going to stimulate a lot of activity, economic activity around those towns. There's been towns that have suffered as a result of the closure of the railway system. Some of us who are old enough to remember that there were towns that were thriving because there was a station and there would be a shop, there would be economic activity there, and there would be a taxi ride as well. So when people get off a train, they are able to get on to buy a few things there, and then And then there will also be factories around it. But since the closure of most of the railway stations, that economic activity has died completely. So this will revitalize economic activity on the towns that are on that line. But not only that, it would have a huge benefit for the provinces. So I think that's an example of how integrated transport can contribute and stimulate activity and economic growth. So I think the high-speed rail, for me, I fully support it. I know there's people who are saying, look, that's a vanity project. It's people who are looking at the rands and cents for running that specific. There is nowhere else in the world where a rail passenger rail system is not subsidized by government. But government, in its wisdom, knows that once you have a system that enables mobility and faster, then the economy benefits. So you have to look broadly at the economic spin-offs, not simply at the cost of running that. So I think it's something that I think it will benefit the province. But also, I just want to get into that point, and I want to mention one very important thing. You know, it would take intentional drive for local government. With young Collins Chabani to really focus on projects that will really meaningfully stimulate economic growth and development that will create real jobs, sustainable jobs. Because I know there's a fixation with us to create temporary jobs that will show that, oh, people were able to clean the streets, we've employed so much. No, we need sustainable jobs. And I think the infrastructure program must talk to that. But also you need the right capacity. And there are so many professionals, in fact, that come from this area. In fact, this area is rich with professionals that are servicing Gauteng, that are servicing various other provinces, your big metros. And really, you need to be intentional about that. Let's not beat about the bush in relation to that issue of capacity. Because if you don't get it right there, because that's where things happen. That is where decisions are made. That is where plans are done. And if you don't have that right kind of capacity for that, and I think the university project that we're amassing, it's a major opportunity for this area. It's a huge opportunity, and if we miss that opportunity, then this area will really not develop to the extent to which we try.
Thanks very much. I think two sets of things in conclusion, and also emphasizing that it is possible to have city of Gia and city of Malabulele. The first set is superstructure. I think we need to start emphasizing on superstructure, not only on infrastructure. Why am I saying this? There's one element of superstructure that is important, that speaks to culture, to political will, ethical state, capacity. And if we don't speak of superstructure, we fail to sustain our initiatives, to maintain our initiatives. It has got infrastructure, it has got economy, it has got technology, it has got culture, with the elements that I'm saying. Then the second set of things that I want to say is politicians must start washing the feet of their voters. Royal leaders must start washing the feet of their servants. Business people must start washing the feet of their customers. policymakers must start having a soul. That's how we can progress.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Thank you, Ndabezita. Thank you, Mr. Nzoma. Thank you, Denice Manganye. I think today we've achieved something that's been very difficult for a number of people, whether they're operating at the national government level, businessmen and women in the private sector, ordinary people, rural South Africa. You were able to articulate their challenges. You succeeded in positioning yourselves as the voice of the people on the ground. Like you correctly said, if South Africa were to evaluate Vision 2030 today, what could we honestly conclude? In 2012, targets were set when the NDP was launched. We need to ask questions. We need to ask, what have we achieved? Where have we failed? And perhaps more importantly, what must we do differently during the final stretch towards 2030? History will not judge us by the quality of our plans. We've all agreed on that. You've got NDP, sectoral plans, IDPs. Those are all good plans, but without execution, they are meaningless. History will judge us by the quality of our results. Results are in terms of are we winning the battle when it comes to unemployment, which is sitting at 33%, inequality, poverty. The people of South Africa do not consume strategies. You've all stated that. They consume outcomes. They want basic things: water, electricity, roads, jobs, safety, education, healthcare, then opportunity to sustain themselves. On that note, I hope we've conveyed the correct message to the leaders of this country. This dialogue is not to criticize. This dialogue is not to assign blame. It's to identify practical solutions. On that note, I thank you.